Morning, Chris.
Anthony, how are you on a fine Tuesday morning?
Honestly, I didn't have a great night's sleep last night. My wife and I had an argument, and she called me the opposite of a trophy wife, and I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
I I don't think it was meant for as a compliment.
I know. I think you should just accept it as a compliment. Just be like, "Thank you." God.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, thank you.
But it still hurt my feeling.
Your one feeling.
I've got one.
That is a entirely terrible segue to be asking you. Are you forcing customers through a sales funnel that they despise? Maybe you despise. Maybe we all despise this sales funnel. And you're forcing, are you, Anthony? Are you forcing people through a sales funnel that they despise?
There's a big assumption there.
According to Gartner, by 2025, 80% of B2B sales interactions between suppliers and buyers will occur in digital channels. This isn't a future trend, it's a present day reality. The caught companies like MailChimp flat-footed. The original email-centric funnel couldn't keep pace with customers who wanted to engage across dozens of different touch points, forcing a painful reinvention of their entire sales process. So Anthony, today on How to Founder, we're talking about the sales funnel.
This is really timely, Chris, isn't it? So, I mean, didn't you did you read the stuff about Monday.com?
No, I have not.
Their stock price. This isn't a joke. This is actually like I'm not.
I was waiting for the dad joke.
I'm not doing another dad joke. No, so they beat their revenue numbers, but their stock price tanked 30% because they said that their sales funnel, their top of the sales funnel process, which was entirely Google based. They said it's not going to work for them long term. Like they admitted their sales funnel was broken. Their numbers were up, and their stock price tanked 30%. So
well, I think
highly relevant.
It sounds like a sales opportunity for our guest today. I mean, it sounds like you need to be reaching out to them right now.
I gotta go. I gotta make a phone call.
We're joined today by Mr. Dan Goodstein, the business therapist with over 2 decades of experience coaching everyone from startups to Fortune 500s. Dan has a sixth sense for fixing broken sales models and building go-to-market strategies that actually work. Dan, welcome. Let's start with Monday. Like, you know, it was working. Why did their stock, tank? Like, what's going on? They're a big company. They should have this figured out, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, guys, thanks for having me. A pleasure to be here. I've spent so much time in the corporate world. I used to be really impressed by these big blue chip brands. And what I've learned over the years is most of them have no idea what they're doing either. They just throw a whole lot of bodies and money at it and hope that something will kind of slip through. There's also a lot of people out there that are just so reliant on a single channel. It's amazing to me. There's entire cottage industries around a particular platform or a particular, lead channel that business owners don't have any control of. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it's so reliant on a single channel that if, somebody changes an algorithm or decides they don't want to work with you anymore, your business kind of shuts down. It's kind of crazy to me.
I mean, Anthony, you've got some experience here as well.
Yeah.
Like sales funnels, like it's a very strange thing because what we call this thing as a funnel, it almost solidifies in our mind like it's a process that it could be repeatable. And in my experience, the moment you build something that starts working is when it stops working. Has that been your experience, Dan?
Yeah, well, because the idea of it being kind of set is a fallacy, right? Especially in the digital world, the AI world that we live in. You got to be, months ahead in days and weeks. The things are just changing so quickly. I mean, we have a sales and lead generation, arm business, and we change our tactics every 90 days. So if you have something, figured out and you haven't changed it in a year, you're behind.
All right, I want to ask you both this question, because this is let's back up just one step to make sure that we're all on the same page. Define a sales funnel, Dan. I know that it seems very basic, but in my experience, when I say a sales funnel, oftentimes people have different ideas in their head. So tell me how you define it, and Anthony, I want you to do the same.
Yeah, listen, in an ideal world, you have, stuff coming in the top, right? So, if you want to use the traditional funnel example, you have water coming into the funnel. Ideally, it's very difficult to get water flowing in the first place, get it beyond a trickle and keep it flowing. So that's the first thing. And then, unlike water, you have to move things from the top of the funnel down the funnel, each kind of stage of the funnel. And there's 1,000 different analysts out there that'll tell you it's a 3-step funnel, 5-step, 12-step, whatever. But the point is, you got to bring people from each phase of the funnel down, and that takes different tactics, different skill sets, different types of people, different tools. We see a lot of organizations that focus on, they have a single person trying to do that entire thing, which often doesn't work, usually doesn't work. But it's not that constant, right? You got to keep feeding the top of it. You got to keep nurturing the things, moving them down. And we see a lot of funnel leakage, if you will, that people don't realize it's happening. So even when they do get the top of the funnel flowing, they don't understand why it's not coming to the bottom. There's a bunch of different reasons, but sometimes it's the wrong stuff coming in. Sometimes the funnel is leaking because they're not doing the right things between the top of the funnel and the middle of the funnel. And then, it's dry in the bottom.
What do you think? What is the final sales funnel?
I always called it a sales sieve, not a funnel. So
yeah, I think that's what I was going to say. It's probably a better analogy, right? Like partially a funnel, partially.
I struggle with this 3-step, 5-step sales funnel because, like you said, Dan, this stuff changes so fast. It's really just leads and how do you nurture leads. That's really what it is to me. It's like, how do you get leads, which is a different skill than how do you nurture leads, which is a different skill than how you close leads. And trying to apply a formula to it that's going to work is trying to apply a formula to falling in love. It does there is no formula for this. It's very dependent on your company, your culture, your customers, your product, that you have to just have experience and wisdom in order to make it work. And I don't have really good answers here. I don't have a formulaic answer here.
Well, I'm just crossing out idea number 6 on my startup list, the formulaic way to fall in love. It's great. I think this is funny, and it's a good conversation. And so let's just touch on it a step more, which is, I think that the funnel analogy, which starts with this idea that you have more leads and then it gets a little bit smaller and then some percentage of those people. So it looks like a funnel. But Dan, I think that you said it right. It's like, it's not really a funnel, because a funnel would imply that everybody that comes in the top ends up down the bottom. And that is not true. It is way more of a
it's more like pushing a rock uphill.
Exactly. And so you get this analogy, and I think, we use this analogy because it's the one that's most present and everybody does it, but it's a little bit of a faulty analogy, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, well, people like visuals, right? So it's a good visual, looks good on a slide deck, especially if you're selling sales and marketing stuff, right? You want to kind of show this, but I'm with you. It's not necessarily that shape, right? You could have nothing on the top and a whole bunch of stuff on the bottom, and vice, like in the Monday example, and vice versa. I like the analogy I like better, and I call it more of to the point I think, Anthony, you were making. Is to deconstruct the sales process. So you think about, you go to a doctor's office, right? You walk in, somebody checks you in. There's a receptionist, there's a medical billing person. There's somebody comes in, brings you into the office, weighs you, takes your vitals, right? Then you see a doctor. Then you maybe see a surgeon, right? They've deconstructed that whole process. Could the surgeon check you in? Yeah, maybe, but it's not his skill set, right? And so, we always advise to, deconstruct the sales process as much as possible. To your point, Anthony, the people that are finding the leads and doing the research are not necessarily the people that are good at nurturing the leads and solutioning and those types of things. And maybe not even the same person who's closing it, quite honestly.
I think it's a terrific analogy, which is, because there's specialty and et cetera, and you're trying to move a person on the process. I think there's one other fallacy, which is because we, as business people, we want to create a system and we want to create a process. We want to have it, we want to be able to put it up on a whiteboard.
Yeah.
But Anthony, to your point, every single sales interaction is infinitely complicated. And you're dealing with so many different variables that this idea that it's a linear process doesn't always hold true. Anthony, in your experience, is there such thing as a sales process, or is this a totally bespoke part of our business where we can't necessarily apply systematized thinking?
Well, I go back to an agency that was here in Colorado. The thing that pops in my head was I'm not gonna say what their agency name was, but they were a sales enablement company. They helped larger companies, really improve their sales process. And I had a lot of interaction with the owner of this agency, and kept thinking to myself, they have a sales problem. The agency couldn't figure out their own sales process. And it wasn't the first time I noticed that the sales consultants struggle with sales.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So if you're a quote expert at this, I don't know if that's Dan, you're going to have to correct me here. So why is that true? Why do sales consultancies struggle with sales if they're good at sales? And so what would flip my mind on this is, all right, so is there truly something that you can pull out, a methodology, a framework, a way of thinking about this that is repeatable?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple different answers here. I've spent a lot of time in the software business, and one of the things I've learned is that really successful marketing software companies push agendas, frameworks, and tools that they want in the marketplace, right? So I think that part of the reason why you have a sales process the way it is today is because the CRM companies have spent.
They have to fit in the CRM,
right? So, and by the way, I'm a sales guy my whole life. I'm not a big fan of CRMs because most CRMs are designed for management, and I've managed sales teams, and I get the need for managing sales teams, but they're prohibitively difficult for the sales reps to use. I'd rather my guys are actually selling and not spending every hour of their day 30 minutes documenting and 30 minutes selling. I want them selling for 56 minutes out of that hour every hour, right? And so the CRMs kind of create this structure, a forced structure, and that's part of it. And the other, I don't know about the agency you're talking about, but listen, there's a lot of consultants out there that just they make money by creating problems that don't exist, and we've seen this even in you mentioned Gartner before. Gartner's stock has gone down like 58% this year so far. I think the paradigm is starting to shift, but in the past, people paid a lot of money for someone to tell them something they could probably figure out on their own. Companies make problems that don't exist. But I guess if I had to, joking aside, I mean, when you get to a big team, you do need a way to manage it, right? And so sometimes you create this, you create some structure, even though, like you said, 1,000 opportunities, they're not going to all follow the same line, right? But you do need some general framework so that you can manage people and expectations and things. But it gets out of hand.
Okay, so I'm going to just recap what we've discussed, and just you guys correct me if I'm wrong. But what we've said to this point is the funnel, even though it's the analogy that we all use, kind of a faulty analogy because it implies, again, that everybody that starts at the top ends up at the bottom. We know that's not true. We also know that we as business people, we try to apply a process, and Dan, in management, we want to know what's happening. And so we ask people sometimes to organize a sales process that fits into a CRM, which might not even accurately show what's going on in a real sales process. And so sometimes even the act of trying to capture that information sometimes creates false positives and false negatives. Also, we know that it's now incredibly complicated because the needs, desires, wants of our customers are incredibly individualized. So where do we go from here, Dan? Help us out of this chaotic mess. We are now, like we've just said all the things that are wrong. How do we as founders start to think about the, for lack of a better word, we'll keep the funnel. How do we think about bringing somebody from aware to decision?
Yeah, well, first of all, you brought up a great point before, which is that the majority of the sales process now happens before a salesperson even engages with a contact, right? So people are doing their research. People are, my father-in-law is in real estate, and he got to the point he was fighting Zillow for a really, really long time, and then he finally realized he's got to stop fighting it, right? These people, the younger generations in particular, are doing all this work ahead of time. They're engaging people at the very bottom of the funnel. So number one is you got to be there with them to help them do that. Establish yourself as a thought leader, as a resource, as someone that they can kind of bounce ideas off of. That old sales as the gatekeeper, and the direct used car salesman thing, right? That just, people are just so turned off by overt sales motions now. And that's part of the reason I think it's tools and technology, but that's part of the reason why people don't want to, buy a car and walk into a car dealership, right? They'd rather do all that research online. If they could do the whole transaction online, they probably would. So I think you gotta be there while they're researching. You got to be there to help support them, guide them through the funnel, or whatever analogy you want it to be, guide them through the process, and then, create a relationship. Because at the end of the day, sales is still about relationships. How do you use technology tools, AI, to help enable that, to do more relationships at scale, so that at the end of the day, when it's a commodity purchase and it's you versus the other guy, they feel like they trust you because you've been there the whole way.
I'm going to start with you, Anthony, on this, because I'm just going to ask one more really big, broad, somewhat heretical question. How do you define what is a salesperson in 2025? And let's say B2B salesperson. What is their job? How would you define that, Anthony? And then I want to ask you the same question, Dan. I think we're touching on something, but I want to get to it.
I think so. I've in my head, what a B2B salesperson is not what it should be, is not what it is today. A B2B salesperson, you have to be responsible for what I call going small. You have to be responsible for building relationships on your own, going to places where your customers are and talking to them and building those relationships. You have to generate your own leads, as well as be able to move the leads that you don't generate, that are handed to you through a process of convincing them to close. So I think it's both. I think you need to be a hunter and a farmer. And I don't think that's a reasonable expectation, but I think it's what's required in order for you to be successful.
Dan, what do you think? Definition of a salesperson in 2025, B2B particularly.
I think you have to be a guide. I think you have to help. I think you have to help them. You're right, Anthony. Right, you got to find the people in the first place, right? Of course, but once you find those people, once you hunt those people down, I think you want to be a guide, a support mechanism, someone to kind of help them down the right path, and then sales 101, which we've seemed to have forgotten about today, is listen. Right, stop shoving down your widgets or your software or your tools down their throats. Listen, right, and come up with a solution that fits their particular situation. If you kind of we used to say, if you just show up and throw up, they know right away that you don't care about their needs, right? You're just trying to make a quota and push something down their throat. And no matter what they say, you're going to say, I think the solution is my software, right? Yeah. So I think, and by the way, I've seen great salespeople. I've spoken to great salespeople where, I'm going down the path, they're guiding me. And at some point they say, I don't think we're a good fit, but I'm going to recommend this other thing to you. And guess what? I never forgot that. And at some point, I'm going to go back to that guy because I trust him, right? It would have been very easy for him to just sell me a bag of goods. And not only did he not do that, but he referred me to a competitor.
I love the analogy of the guide because I think it's incredibly accurate. And I think you guys are both onto something. And Dan, you and I probably came up in the same time in sales where, it was about persuasion and being taught the tools of persuasion. And it was about information that I had information. I was going to selectively give that information to somebody else to persuade them. And that paradigm does not exist anymore. So the guide,
I've got the information.
It's such a good analogy here. So tactically, you started with this idea that you have to be out there, you have to provide information, you have to be one of the thought leaders that allows those people to start educating themselves on your product or service. But then once they've engaged with a salesperson, Dan, how do we guide them? What are the steps that you recommend and coach on to say, how do we start to move them forward to help them make a good decision?
Yeah, again, I think it's problem led. You focus on them and going, letting them go on the journey that they want to go on, the way that they want to go on it, instead of forcing them into your sales process, right? And then there's a lot of really interesting tools and technology right now that help, right? Because the other question that you didn't ask, but then comes up next, which is, okay, well, how do I do this at scale? Like, how do I create relationships at scale? And so at some point you do need, in my opinion, you do need tools and AI and things to kind of help you do that. And there's some really interesting things out there, right? That help create personalization at scale. Create the initial kind of interest and hook. I think the key though is allowing the sales process to happen the way that the customer wants it to happen instead of the way that you or the organization want it to happen.
Dan, I'm gonna go off script here a little bit and ask you, would you be willing to share a couple of those tools? What are the tools?
Yeah. What do you?
Yeah. So we have a couple that we use. One of them is AI Sales Agency, aisalesagency.org, and we're using this for sales outreach at scale. So we've all been buried by the junk in our inboxes, like email, spam, and LinkedIn automation and stuff like that. There's this particular tool. Actually does the research, figures out your ideal customer profile with a little help from you, of course, gets their information and then researches them and sends them messages that are catered specifically to them. So it'll look at their LinkedIn, it'll look at their company website, it'll check news sources, it'll check intent data, and it'll write them a personalized email. And it's so good that we've had to stop tracking reply rate as the metric, as the KPI, because even the people that aren't interested respond and say that they appreciate how much time the rep put into researching their company. You do things like that so that you can focus on putting, I think, a little bit more effort into the qualified ones, the ones that are raising their hand saying, hey, I need help, right? And let some of the other stuff happen, using tools like that. There's also some good, we're using some things around phone and text and voicemail as well, LinkedIn, video. For me, I like it's basically an AI SDR. That goes out and does the part that, most salespeople don't want to do, right? They want to speak to people that are interested and qualified and worth their time and not, spend 80% of their day looking up contact information and sending out cold emails.
Anthony, I think this is really kind of the heart of this conversation too, because if we understand now, and I think this is where we've gotten to, is that being a good salesperson in 2025 really is about being a good person. It's about asking questions. It's about trying to understand. It's not showing up and throwing up, Dan. Like it's actually just trying to be of service to their prospect. There now is this world though, where you can automate so much of this process. AI is such a powerful tool. We all should be using it in some form or fashion in the sales funnel. How do you as a founder think about what is your job versus the job of automation? And I know it's an impossible question, but at least frame it out for us, Anthony. How would you approach it?
So do not automate first. Go sell yourself. Go figure out what it takes in order to close a client. We said this like how many times on this podcast, Chris? It's like stop trying to scale something you don't know how it works in the first place yet. You have to make it work. You have to make it work well, and then you can start adding automation and scale to it. Because what most founders do is they manufacture what they think the sales process is in their head. They automate that, and 90% of it is wrong, and then they wonder why things aren't working.
It's a great point, Dan. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's to kind of piggyback on that. I think it's use tools and AI to accelerate and increase that personal touch, right? So if you can use it to get yourself in front of more people, right, then and in an authentic way. Like I had a customer last week who's actually a friend, and he said to me, I'm talking to this ad agency and they want me to create all this content on Instagram and whatever. And he's like, I've never done a video before. And I was about to tell him, oh, well, if you're nervous about it, there's AI tools that can, create the video for you. And I stopped. I said, you know what? Don't do that. I said, because I'd rather you be authentic. I'd rather you stumble through your first 10 videos and be authentic, and somebody out there realizes you're like a real person, you're a real guy, and opposed to being super overproduced, super polished, lose the authenticity, right? So I said to him, I said, do the content, make it really authentic and personal, and then let's use AI and automation to get through the responses or do further targeting or help kind of enable you to do more of that content.
I think that where we're landing is that the smartest early stage companies are going to be the ones that build their own process. I mean, that you may have to change it and use different terminology, but really what's going to work for one company probably is not going to work for another company. And it's up to you, Anthony, as the founder, to go out and really figure that out with the knowledge that will change over time, et cetera. I mean, is that a fair summation, Anthony? And then Dan, I want to ask you one more question before we get to the speed round.
Yeah, I think that's right. You have to figure out how your sales process is going to work. You're responsible for not just the sales process, but the marketing, how you're getting awareness, and also the product itself. So you are in the best seat, as it were, to be able to connect the dots from the product to what the customer needs are. And whether or not you may not have a product that's a fit for them, which means either you've designed the product wrong or you targeted incorrectly. And you're going to be able to feel the customer's pain better than anybody else, and maybe make that sale just because you're going to be able to solve it because you understand the entire solution.
I think that's a good summation. Dan, here's my final question before we get to the speed round. It's a big one, but I'm hoping you can help us, which is, let's say that Anthony and I are early stage founders and we come to you and say, we just are trying to start to think through this problem. What advice would you give us from a very early days on how we can start to structure and understand what our sales process is going to look like? How do we capture, document, et cetera? Or just what advice would you give us?
We did this for a large company recently, and it might surprise you, but what I told them to do was not to start with the process, but to start with the customers. We compiled, and we actually started using some AI to do this and put these AI automations into their CRM to kind of just collect data and see like where things were leaking in the funnel and what things were working, what things weren't working, and we just spent like 60 days just talking to their clients. So I think at the end of the day, we got to go back to it's what the client needs, right? It's what the client is. You're trying to solve a problem, for the client. And then once you understand what the common denominator is between all your clients, and the types of things they're looking for and the way that they're buying those things, then you kind of back into how that maps to your offerings, and your goals. And then you kind of bridge the gap between and figure out the right process to connect the two together.
Anthony, I should have had a V8 moment, which is we as founders, we constantly are preaching to go talk to customers, but then we go into our office and design a sales process. Like we don't actually think about our customers when we're designing a sales process. Like what Dan's just saying is brilliant. Like we have to start with our customers and work backwards. What do you think about that? Is that obvious and it's just something I've been missing?
It's obvious, and you need to update your pop culture references. Having a V8 moment is
that's like 1980. That is very early. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. All right.
Well, you could also say, "Where's the beef, Chris?" and it'd have the same impact.
That one I knew. I didn't get the V8 reference, but I got that one.
Oh God, I'm feeling very old at the moment. All right, Dan, are you ready for the speed round? See, that was what we call the assumptive close, Dan. I just asked.
I like it. I didn't have a choice. Yeah, I guess I'm ready.
Moved it right through. All right, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Just answer the first thing that pops into your head. Should I create gated content or open access educational content?
Depends on the goal, whether it's lead gen or awareness.
Inbound leads or outbound prospecting, which are more valuable?
Inbound, depending on where it came from.
This is a free trials, or should I make people pay for pilot projects?
Make them pay a small amount that shows that they're committed.
Sales scripts or just conversational freedom?
Bullet points.
Good answer. Nurturing sequences, automation, or should I just immediately get on the phone with them?
Nurturing sequences, because you want to get on the phone with them, but they don't want to get on the phone with you.
Fair point. Nobody really wants to get on the phone with me, Anthony. Anthony, what did you learn today?
I learned, I don't know. This is hard.
We didn't do very good, Chris. I don't know if you or me, but
this is hard. No, the things that I wrote down. Dan said, deconstruct the sales process. And that funnel may be a false illustration, which I agree with. Having a CRM is not a sales process. It actually may hurt. A majority of the sales processes now happen before a salesperson engages. Customers are doing their own research. So this is my connection to that is if they weren't blurred before, it's becoming way more blurred now. The line between sales and marketing is almost indistinguishable now. The sales process is guiding a customer to solution. And then I wrote down AISalesAgency.org, which I went to during the podcast, and they're not accepting any new customers. So
it's why
that stinks.
It's great.
I know a guy, Anthony. Just mention, just have them mention your podcast.
All right, sound good.
I'm just so glad you were so engaged with my conversation, Anthony, that you're Deep Dive Resources, Challenger Sale by Matthew Dixon and Brent Adamson. It's a classic. Never Split the Difference by Chris Votts. Very good book. We say this all the time. Influence by Robert Cialdini. And Thinking Fast and Slow, the most important business book ever written. If you can get through it, that's amazing. If not, just ask AI to summarize. But really what we're going to do, Dan, is we're going to go to your website. We're going to go to the businesstherapist.org. Is it? No, .com.
Businesstherapist.org.
And see where can we connect with you. Obviously, we're going to go there to learn some cool stuff. But where can we get in touch with you, Dan?
Yeah, you can go businesstherapist.org. I'm on LinkedIn as well, and send me a message. I respond to everything.
Is it you or is it your AI? Is it your?
No, it's me. See, that's me.
You could go. It's just a way for somebody to talk to a real human being.
If you're not qualified, I'll send the AI after you. But until you are. But
somehow I'm going to guess that Anthony, we're going to get the AI response. Thank you for your message.
Even scammers who call me now is AI because I'm not worthwhile at the time.
Just a numbers game.
Just a numbers game.
I think it's been a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us, Dan. Anthony, get us out of here.
Yeah, again, Dan, thank you a ton for chatting with us about this. Is hard, and it's the thing that most founders struggle with. For those of you that got value, please be sure to visit us at howtofounder.com, where you can connect with us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify channels. And as always, Chris, me, Stephanie, the team at How to Founder, we believe that you, the founder, are the pioneer of economic prosperity, and we're just really grateful to be here along the way with you. Thanks, everybody.